From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. President-elect Donald Trump has vowed to use the military to deport millions of undocumented migrants, claiming it will be the largest mass deportation in history. Sharing a post from Judicial Watch President John Fitton, Trump confirmed plans to declare a national emergency and deploy military assets to reverse what he calls the Biden invasion. The move has sparked concerns as the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act limits military involvement in domestic law enforcement. Trump has not specified which military branches would be involved. Rights groups are preparing legal challenges against the administration's potential mass deportation program. Trump's hardline immigration cabinet appointments, including figures like Tom Homan and Stephen Miller, indicate a strong push to fulfill his controversial promise of a historic migrant purge. Approximately 11 million irregular migrants are estimated to be living in the U.S., down from a peak of roughly 12.2 million in 2007, according to the Pew Research Center. President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has denied allegations of sexual assault, but has confirmed that he paid a woman who accused him of misconduct. Hegseth's attorney, Timothy Parlatore, says he maintains his innocence, explaining that the payment was a settlement to avoid career damage amid the Me Too movement, which called out sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and rape culture. The accusation dates back to a 2017 incident at a California Republican women's conference, which was investigated by police, though no charges were filed. Hegseth, who is a veteran and former Fox News host, is under scrutiny as he faces Senate confirmation for his new role overseeing the U.S. military. His potential appointment is complicated by concerns over his lack of political experience and controversial opinions. These include actively urging Trump during his first term to pardon several service members accused of war crimes, as well as calling liberals domestic enemies. Republicans are considering cuts to Medicaid and Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, benefits to offset the cost of extending tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations. As the GOP prepares to take control of Congress, there are discussions about introducing strict work requirements and spending caps on these programs. The proposed changes aim to reduce the $4.6 trillion deficit projected from extending 2017 tax cuts. Despite research showing that work requirements do not effectively increase employment, Republicans see these changes as a way to save money. Critics like Representative Summer Lee argue that these cuts will harm vulnerable Americans to fund tax breaks for the rich. On the campaign trail earlier this year, Trump proposed reducing the corporate tax rate from 21 to 15%. That change would give the 100 largest U.S. corporations a combined tax cut of $48 billion a year. Last month, the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy released an analysis showing that Trump's tax proposals would deliver annual tax cuts to the top 5% and tax hikes for the bottom 95%. President Joe Biden has urged world leaders to address worldwide hunger and poverty as global crises further worsen the challenges. Addressing the G20 summit in Brazil this week, the president said Washington has invested $160 billion in global development since he assumed office. Biden said global crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic, spiraling wars, and increasingly frequent climate disasters, mean that all nations must rise up to meet the challenges. Biden pointed in particular to the need for world leaders to raise private capital to meet the challenges. He said many nations are forced to choose between investment and repaying debts. The members of the G20 represent around 85% of the world's GDP, more than 75% of world trade, and approximately two-thirds of the world's population. A stabbing spree in New York City killed 2 people and left a third person critically injured. The attacks, described as random by authorities, occurred over 2 hours at 3 separate locations in Manhattan on Monday morning. The first victim, a construction worker, was fatally stabbed in the abdomen. 2 hours later, another man was attacked while fishing. The third stabbing occurred near the UN headquarters, where a woman was critically injured in broad daylight. The suspect is a 51-year-old homeless male with a criminal record. He was arrested shortly after a witness identified him. Police recovered 2 bloodied kitchen knives at the scene. Mayor Eric Adams condemned the incident, highlighting failures in the mental health and criminal justice systems. The investigation continues with no additional suspects sought at this time. U.S. imposes sanctions on Israeli settlers and entities over West Bank violence. Details after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. The U.S. has imposed new sanctions targeting Israeli settlers and organizations linked to extremist violence in the occupied West Bank. The sanctions come amid rising settler attacks on Palestinians, with reports indicating nearly 1,500 incidents last month alone. Data from Peace Now, an Israeli anti-settlement organization, indicates that over 500,000 Israeli settlers reside illegally in 146 settlements and 224 outposts in the West Bank. The Treasury Department has sanctioned 3 individuals, Shabtai Koshlevsky, Itamar Yehuda Levi, and Zohar Sabah. It has also sanctioned entities like the Amana settlement movement, which is a key player in expanding Israeli settlements and violent actions. It has also sanctioned 2 of its subsidiaries. Tensions remain high following Israel's ongoing war on Gaza, which has killed over 43,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children. The U.S. has reiterated its commitment to holding accountable those fostering violence and instability in the West Bank. As well, the United States and its allies have condemned Israeli settlers' violence, saying they undermine peace and stability in the region. In the past 24 hours, relentless Israeli airstrikes in Gaza have killed at least 50 more Palestinians and left 112 others injured. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, Israel's actions have resulted in 3 family massacres within this period. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, Hezbollah's rocket attacks on Israel have wounded at least 9 people. In retaliation, Israeli airstrikes targeted Lebanon's capital, Beirut, killing 2 people in the early hours and 5 more in the evening. Since the war's outbreak, Israel has killed over 3,500 people and injured nearly 15,000 in its attacks on Lebanon. UNICEF reports that over 200 children have been killed in Lebanon in the past 2 months. At the diplomatic level, the U.S. claims to have conducted constructive ceasefire talks with Hezbollah and Lebanese officials. However, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists on maintaining full military freedom in Lebanon as part of any ceasefire agreement. Israel's genocide in Gaza has killed at least 43,972 Palestinians and wounded 104,008 since October 7, 2023. The Palestinian Media Office reports that of the 17,492 Palestinian children Israel has killed, 211 are newborns and 825 are infants under the age of 1. Nearly 70% of victims are women and children, with over 35,000 children now living without one or both parents. Israel faces a genocide case at the International Court of Justice for its war and violence in Gaza. A woman was killed and 10 others injured in northern Israel on Monday evening when a rocket fired from Lebanon struck a building in the city of Shifa Amr. Shifa Amr is an Arab city occupied by Israel in 1948, located in the western Galilee region. The woman was inside a fortified room in a 3-story building when the rocket struck, killing her. Emergency services say 10 people who sustained minor injuries from shattering glass were evacuated from the building. The Israeli military reported that about 15 rockets were launched from Lebanon targeting northern Israel, including western, upper, and central Galilee. A leading Islamic scholar in Pakistan has declared that using virtual private networks, or VPNs, for immoral or illegal activities is un-Islamic. Chairman of the Council of Islamic Ideology, Naimi, says using VPNs to access indecent content or undermine national security violates Islamic principles. However, he clarified that VPNs used for education, communication, or positive purposes remain permissible. His statement coincides with the government's plans to ban VPNs following reports of their rising use, particularly after restrictions on social media platform X were imposed earlier this year. In July, the government told a court that X is a threat to national security and cannot be restored. Although the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority has launched a VPN registration program for IT professionals, the government has not yet issued a formal ban. The military has also warned about the growing threat of digital terrorism, with VPNs being used to bypass content restrictions and spread propaganda. Despite this statement from a leading authority, other religious scholars are distancing themselves from Naimi's remarks. Sudan is grappling with a devastating cholera outbreak, which has killed 699 people and infected over 24,000. The disease has spread to 11 of the country's 18 states, with some regions like Al Jazeera and the West Nile witnessing an uptake in cases. The outbreak has been made worse by the ongoing civil war between the government and the paramilitary rapid support forces. It has left the health sector severely weakened, lacking essential medical supplies. Displaced communities, especially in the New Halfa area, are particularly vulnerable, living in overcrowded conditions with limited access to health care. Despite efforts by the government and local organizations, the humanitarian crisis continues to worsen, with displaced families struggling to survive in makeshift camps. Health officials have warned that the spread of cholera is fueled by inadequate sanitation and the breakdown of essential services. Lawmakers gathered on Capitol Hill last week to mark East Turkistan National Day, commemorating the founding of two short-lived Uyghur republics in 1933 and 1944. The event highlighted the ongoing persecution of Uyghurs in the Chinese-occupied East Turkestan region. The commemoration began with the national anthems of the U.S. and East Turkestan. Prominent attendees included former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Congressman Tom Suozzi, and Uyghur advocacy groups. Lawmakers reaffirmed their bipartisan support for the Uyghur community, condemning China's actions, including mass detentions and forced sterilizations, as genocide. Members of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, including Senators Jeff Merkley and Marco Rubio, reiterated the need for stronger U.S. actions to hold China accountable. Observers said the event underscored a growing push for international pressure to address the human rights crisis Uyghurs face at the hands of the Chinese government. A new report warns that sea level rise could displace up to 20 million people in the Mediterranean by 2100. The document by the group Mediterranean Experts on Climate and Environmental Change says the region, which is already prone to extreme flooding, also faces threats to transport networks and cultural heritage sites. 3 major airports in the area are among the world's most vulnerable to coastal flooding. The Mediterranean, which is heating up faster than the global average, is experiencing a 40% increase in marine heat waves, which could worsen by the century's end. Sea levels are expected to rise by 1 meter, with extreme sea level events growing significantly. The region also suffers from high plastic pollution and water scarcity during peak tourist months. The report stresses urgent action to mitigate climate change impacts and calls for more cross-border cooperation to ensure a sustainable future for the Mediterranean. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. Please donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.